In today's video, we're going to talk about Google penalties and the types of Google penalties that you might be experiencing, how to identify them, and some new ways to reverse them. We're going to go through what some of the top experts have to say, and I'm going to give you my own personal opinions on what you should and shouldn't do. And then I'm going to give you some new tips and tricks to reverse two types of Google penalties. And that is one, a domain or backlink penalty, and that is number two, a content penalty. I went into Google and I found one of the top SEO experts that I think we all know about, Neil Patel. And here's Neil Patel's article, and here are his recommendations. Number one, check if you have a ranking problem. Investigate algorithm updates. Number three, run an SEO audit. Run a content audit. And five, clean up your backlink profile. And that's about it. And as we continue, I found the next website, WebFX, which is one of the largest digital agencies and SEO agencies in the United States. And as we go through here, there's definitely some useful information about understanding what a penalty is, although we lack a lot of insights on how to actually reverse that penalty. So we do have information about recovering from a manual penalty, but essentially, as you scroll down, you can see there is very little actual information about what they would do or what you should do to reverse a penalty. In fact, they bring up old systems, Panda and Penguin, and that is not very useful. And so why is it that a lot of the top agencies are really lacking to show you insights that are very useful and valuable and even up to date? Well, I have nothing against Coalition, but I just Googled the top SEO agencies in the United States, and I really like the fact that they have 780 plus case studies. So if you're someone from Coalition and listening to this, I appreciate the fact that you've done this, and I have nothing against you. But what I would like to note here is the way that they highlight their performance. So if we go and we look at the period of October 2022 through April of 2023, what we can see is that they've reported 25.47% increase in users, roughly 28% increase in sessions, and essentially just 9% new users growth. As we look at this, what we can see is that they're reporting on a year-over-year metric. Even though they say a previous 6-month period to the previous 6-month period, this is still a year-over-year metric. And when we go to Roku's growth rate, around that same time, their stock essentially bottomed out, and they started to experience growth naturally. What does that mean? That means that the company is, in short, reporting on their metrics year over year in a fashion that's going with the growth of the company. Did they really achieve that growth through SEO? Most likely, no. We can see this again when we go through another one of their case studies as they highlight what they did. And if we scroll down, we can see the period of which they implemented their SEO, which was January 2023 to the end of July 2023. And if we open that up into Ahrefs, what we can see is during that period, they actually started to experience growth almost after they stopped their SEO implementations, meaning that there was roughly 1,400 visitors that came in against only 51 pages. And I have nothing against that, especially when looking at traffic. We have to look at all things being relative. But for one of the top SEO agencies in the United States, I would think they could do a little bit more. What does all this have to do with Google penalties? The first thing we need to understand is how all this misinformation comes out into the internet, that is YouTube videos, articles, podcasts, whatever. Well, I Googled how many SEO agencies there are in the United States, and I found that there's actually 30,000 SEO companies in the US, and they experienced a 3.2% growth rate in the US, which is interesting because you would expect that probably SEO agencies are going in lower demand, and in fact, they're going in higher demand. I Googled SEO Sarasota, which is Sarasota, Florida, and I found a shocking number of results. Over 2.1 million pages show for SEO agencies, and if we scroll down, we can see a number of agencies that are specifically designed for the area. We can see this one, SEOinsarasota.com, SarasotaSEOagency.com, and more. It's a dirty little not so secret that the SEO world doesn't want you to know. There's 207,000 SEO employees that work in the industry globally, 29,000 in the UK. Most of these employees have very little SEO experience, and they really don't know how Google works. As a result, you're left guessing and reading all of this information and arguing with each other and arguing with yourself, and you're losing your traffic, and you are going insane. And so let's fix that today. Let's talk about the two types of penalties that you should be looking for. I like to classify them as a domain penalty and a content penalty. A domain penalty is when your domain completely gets eclipsed from Google. This is entirely removed from Google, and we can see that reflected in a chart. I'm not talking about manual penalties or anything like that. Key indicators for you would be that you've done some backlink building or some recent press and PR, and all of a sudden your impressions and your clicks went to zero. We can see that in a tool like Ahrefs here, where all of a sudden we go to zero with our traffic and we've been taken out of Google. A content penalty is a little bit more difficult to identify. Generally, what we're going to be looking for is a drifting downwards of traffic over time, meaning that our content is losing trust within Google. A difficult concept with content penalties, though, is that there is one thing that could be tricking you, making you think that you have a content penalty when you don't, and that is intent shifts within Google. Let's say, for example, you have a blog post that's ranking for a particular keyword, and now you go back to that keyword, meaning you put it into Google and you see what the results are, and you don't see blog posts, you see service pages or commercial investigation pages. That would be an intent shift. This is when Google identifies that certain keywords and what users are looking for match a different page type than what you had prior. In 2019, only 3 Google Core updates were made compared to now where we're at, where there's more than 10 per year. Your website as a whole should probably be trending to the upside over the past 5 years. If you have a 5-year picture, it could look something like this if it were in a healthy state. This, as we can see, is a lumpy up and down nature to the traffic over time during Google Core updates. Generally, though, what we should see, in contrast to what we saw prior, is a trend going to the upside rather than a trend going to the downside as more core updates take hold. Let's talk about the 2 best methods for resolving a backlink or domain penalty once you've identified it. If we put in the domain to Ahrefs and we go over to the left and we look at anchors, I like to use this because anchors give me a better idea of where maybe good backlinks and bad backlinks are coming from, and not just looking at the domain itself or the domain rating. We can see here something like Go Now. If I open this up, we can see some potentially bad backlinks that have no DR whatsoever and potentially maybe hurting us. We can export that out into a CSV. I highly recommend doing that and collecting your CSV into a list of domains that we will then use later. You can also use a tool like SEMrush, which does have one very good feature, and that is a backlink audit using an overall toxicity score. And what you'll do is you'll want to take the domains themselves, not just the individual links. Make sure that you are grabbing the domain and putting that into your list. You will then need to go to Google, and if you just Google the Google disavow tool, you will have to Google that to find this page. That will show you a webmaster's answers page, and what you'll be doing is you will be putting together a text file list of just domains. I highly recommend not disavowing individual links, but disavowing these spam domains. You will generate a text file that will look like a list of domains like this, and then once you have that text file, you will open up the Google Disavow Links tool page here, which is no longer in Google Search Console. The last thing that we need to cover is the common questions. Number 1 common question that is received is, do links matter? They definitely matter. For smaller websites, though, you want to have a larger profile of healthy backlinks coming from good websites rather than low backlinks coming from bad websites. And for smaller brands, you're going to get impacted more by having more unhealthy backlinks. Meaning that, yes, disavowing backlinks, especially when you are a smaller brand and a lesser known brand, will absolutely help with your penalty. Understand that it may take up to 12 months for your penalty to be completely reversed. Another key aspect to both domain and content penalties is our trust and authority within the domain itself. This is unfortunately not measurable through any tools that we have. The only tool that we can use is actually Google itself. What we have here is a brand called Verywell Health, and if we scroll through their Google results, which is a way to see how Google is identifying the entity and connecting the entity to other trust signals, what we can see is on the right They've got a Wikipedia page. They have an ownership relationship to metadata that's within Google. They have imagery that's on the website. And as you scroll down, you can see Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, their own Wikipedia page, LinkedIn page where there are real employees that are listed there, and much more. This is an example of someone who is not doing that. We have Conversation Starters World, which is a niche website, and we can see very little information about it. And in fact, as you scroll through the Google search results for the brand, there's very little information that would send it trust signals. And so here are some ways that you can think to fix this. Make sure you Google your brand. And what you can see is you can see that the brand itself has search volume, which can be done if you have social media marketing that you're doing, especially through TikTok or Instagram, where people are forced to go into Google and Google your brand. Make sure that your website has a lot of unique imagery, and that unique imagery is tagged with both alt tags and title tags that are related to keywords. So there's lots of robust images that are available and indexed on Google. If you can, build a Wikipedia page for yourself, and also make sure that you have social media profiles that have real activity on them, not just for links, but real true activity where they're building followers and people are talking about you. And lastly, make sure that you have a LinkedIn page with real employees that are going to that LinkedIn page. If you're a smaller brand, maybe you're a local website, or maybe you're a doctor, make sure that you have lots of history of accreditation to your website, even BBB.org or something similar that would send a lot of trust. Depending on the type of brand that you have, getting reviews about your product or service can also be very useful in building a robust footprint within Google. Remember, you are trying to build a robust footprint for your brand results and references to your brand, and not just backlinks. It doesn't matter any longer whether there is a link going to your website. You want to build search results for your brand and send trust signals. As an example here, we have Trustpilot that's showing up, and we can see that would be a great reviews resource. Maybe if you're a software company, you would use G2. Look for ways where your brand is referenced. This could also be forum references like Reddit or somewhere else that's very trusting. And make sure that, again, your brand is being discussed, talked about, and referenced under your specific niche. Now let's take a look at content penalties. Content penalties are definitely harder to identify because there is no tool that can help us do this. We have to use our eye, and we have to use our qualitative insights to be able to determine what's happening. The best way to determine if we might have content problems is not to look at rankings, it's not to look at traffic, it's actually to look at good examples of websites that are trending and results within Google, and determine whether we are following those best practices or not. Remember, back in 2014, Google released featured snippets which answer questions to queries. Those are essentially pulling out insights within articles, using phrases and passages, as they call them, from the Google patent, and allowing us to better understand how Google is analyzing on-page information using user signals to be able to do this. They did this all the way back in 2014, and then in 2018 released the InfoGain patent, and in 2022 they released the helpful content update. These are all strong indicators that Google is looking for more and more on-page insights to be able to determine whether a website is of quality. Before we dig into this, it's important that you do analyze your backlink profile and analyze your brand trust, and make sure that you fix that, or else anything that you do within your content here is not going to matter. As we scroll down, we can see some really cool insights. Number one, we have key takeaways that's at the very top of the article. So as a general best practice, make sure that you are answering the user's question very simply in a short manner with key takeaways at the top. We can see a lot of unique insights, which means that they are not copying competitors. They are not looking at first page results and then copying those headlines and writing their own unique copy. They are quite literally thinking of something brand new to write about that is not influenced by anything that's on Google's first page results. In addition, what we can see is that all of these headlines are very different. They bring unique insights to the table. They reference real people. They reference entities. And as we scroll through, it's not a very long article. There are lots of external links, and generally, it just answers the question. Now, let's take a look at what not to do. Here is a niche website addressing a simple yes or no question. The question or query that somebody would be putting into Google is, does Trader Joe's take Apple Pay? And really that question should just be a yes or no answer. As we scroll through the article, what we can see is a lot of over optimization for SEO, a long article that's occurring, and generally a not very helpful article as well. We don't have any key takeaways. We don't have any expert insights. We don't have anything that would speak to authority. In addition, when we Google the brand name, nothing really comes up. It's very confusing. Which one is them? Of course, this is their result, but Google does not have a robust result for their brand. When we pull them up into Ahrefs, we can see they were most recently impacted by the March update, meaning all of these things that we're discussing, the branding, the trust, the authority, the way the articles are being written, are all having a strong correlation in terms of what Google is looking for and what Google is not. As Google has mentioned to us in their latest guidelines, content on websites are now being graded, and that is having an overall grade to your website's performance. Google is not necessarily reading the content and making a judgment call on it. It is using user signals. Those user signals include your ranking to your website. They include the click-through rate to your website. They include whether there is a bounce rate on that page itself, meaning users are going back to Google if they are not getting their question answered. And they are also looking at engagement on the page. How do you go about resolving this content penalty? Let's say you've gone through the analysis and you know that you have this problem. What do you do next? You have two options. Let's say, for example, you have a pretty big content footprint. That would be the number of pages that are published on your domain. Let's, for in this case, presume that you have 500. Option number one that you have is to essentially publish more and new content that eclipses the percentage of bad content that you have. If you have 500 pages, try to publish 500 new, better, high-quality pages using these new guidelines. Your second option is to go through those pages, determine what's the least quality ones, and actually unpublish them to try to even out the balancing of your profile once more. I wouldn't be looking at rankings and traffic signals as just a way to determine what's low quality. I would be going through the article itself and determining what you might want to either rewrite or unpublish temporarily. If you choose to publish new and healthy content for the domain, here's the tactic that I highly recommend. Number one, make sure that you are picking keywords that are easy to win. This is looking for keywords where there's very little content, because remember, your domain is under a penalty and it is under stress. And so most likely Google will not rank you for keywords unless it absolutely has to. So look for keywords that are extremely easy to win or extremely underserved. Number two, as you look for these easy to win keywords, what you will be doing is you will be sending healthy signals to Google systems. This is a higher ranking percentage for pages that are on your website, higher click-through rates, and this is potentially higher engagement rates, and all the other signals that Google is looking for when you execute the content properly. And lastly, I want to talk about manual actions to close this out. If you have a manual action on your page, it's best to understand where it's coming from. There are two teams at Google, the core search team and the spam team. If you have a manual action on your domain, most likely it was reviewed by a real person and someone decided to give you that manual action. The best way to reverse that manual action is to improve the quality of all of your pages. That's not just your content, that's also your about page, your privacy policy page, your terms of service, and generally any other page that might show that you have trust for your brand. Let's say, for example, you're selling products. You might want to have a guarantees page. You might want to have a returns page. You might want to have things that generally show that you can answer all of the users' questions and queries that they would have even when they come to your brand's website. This would validate that you're a true, trusted brand, and any manual action that you have can be reversed after you fix that. I like to end all my videos discussing why I started this channel. Generally, I was pretty upset seeing all these articles, YouTube videos, podcasts, people saying they know what they can do, saying they know how to do it when they generally can't. I'm an SEO professional. I've been doing this for 7+ years. I've spent a lot of my years looking at data, going through trial and error, and generally keeping a track and beat on what Google is changing within its systems, and that's better helped me to be able to adapt. Note, A lot of the things that I've discussed here, you might already know, but hopefully some of these tactics are new and are helpful to you. Understand that every single domain and their penalties is a one-by-one basis, and it may take some time to figure out what's going on. If you would like to, I work with some pretty major brands. I've hidden my identity so I can express myself more openly here, but this is my email address, and I provide a number of SEO services. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and hit all the buttons. And I do appreciate the comments, and I hope that this was useful for you.